Okay, Hariom and good morning, everybody. We are keeping our fingers crossed today for internet. Last week, Bhagavan had other plans. But yesterday I had class and internet was just fine. So let us see what happens. We are seeing the Devi and Asuri Sampat in chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita. And specifically now we're in the section on Asuri Sampat. Bhagavan is coming to the end. For verses and verses, he has been painting an elaborate picture of what the Asuri Sampat looks like, because we have a biased tendency to assume that Asuri Sampat is what criminals have and Devi Sampat is what we have. But as we have been studying it, it's really been, it's an eye opener for us to think about and realize that, actually these Asuri Sampat that are Nibandhaya, that lead one to further bondage, I I actually have these qualities. They're actually part of me too. So the hope is that by hearing about them and seeing them and thinking about them, I try to remove them from my personality. Not with judgment and hatred, but with understanding that I've come with it and I can't do anything about the fact that I have brought it, but I can do something about what happens next. So this is where we are, and this is why we are studying it. We're studying this whole section to really illumine the parts of our mind that are unseen to us, that are seen by Bhagavan. So now we pick up, we had just started chapter 17, verse 17, and then we lost internet. So we'll start back from the beginning of verse 17. Let us chant. Shranya. आत्मसम्भाविता स्तब्धाः
आत्मसम्भाविता स्तब्धाः
धनमानमदान्विताः
धनमानमदान्विताः
यजन्ते नाम यज्ञैस्ते
यजन्ते नाम यज्ञैस्ते
दम्भेनाविधिपूर्वकम्.
दम्भेनाविधिपूर्वकम्.
These people are Atma Sambhavitaha. That means they're self-glorified or self-proclaimed great people, virtuous people, and they have a lot of pride in their qualities. Vidyaji, we're starting from verse number 17 in chapter 16. Okay? These people are self-proclaimed, meaning they have this I'm great attitude that they glorify themselves. Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya says, Na sadhu bihi, means these qualities that they praise in themselves are not glorified by sadhus. So they're self-appointed great people. And if there is nobody there to glorify them, they glorify themselves and they pay others to glorify them. Like the story of that man who comes to do an introduction of the chief guest of the night. And he has a nice long description. This man is so generous, and he is so he's such a great contributor to society, and he's so considerate of his employees, and a whole list of things. And at the end, he's like, I didn't say this. He said I should say it about him. He made it up for himself. I'm just reading to you what he asked me to. Self-glorified. But the mind does that to us too. The mind tells us that we have these great qualities and we should feel special about the fact that we have those qualities. Right? The other thing is that the qualities that are being talked about, they could also be considered great in society, but not considered great by sadhus. Meaning, like, to be rich is glorified in society. To be famous in Hollywood, Bollywood, etc., is glorified in society. You ask kids who their role models are, and they will choose famous singers and famous Hollywood and Bollywood actors and all of that, right? But that thing is not glorified by sadhus. A sadhu will not say that is a wonderful thing. So, Atma Sambhavitaha means these people who are considered great by themselves. The things that make them great in their mind are not things that would qualify as greatness in the mind of a sadhu. Because it is because these things that are considered great are not going to lead them to joy. It is the opposite. It leads them to sorrow. I mean, the world has seen enough evidence about how these things lead us to sorrow, right? But the other thing that comes with it is we think that other people should glorify us. You know, I have these qualities and therefore I should be glorified. And one of the really dangerous ones that is very prevalent in in our tradition is people consider it glorious to be self-taught. Meaning, I take pride in the fact that I can study myself and give my own interpretation of Shastra. But that is not glorified by sadhus because in our tradition, you're supposed to follow a parampara. In fact, you're supposed to plagiarize. This is the one place where plagiarism is required. It is not optional, it is required because you're supposed to teach what the parampara says, not what you think Bhagavad Gita is saying. The only thing that we add really is relevant modern examples. Everything else is copy paste from generations of teaching, you know? So, um, Atma Sam Atma Sambhavitaha is they glorify themselves for all these kinds of things, and it's wrong glorification. Then Stabdaha, they're like a stump, like they're stubborn, not humble, arrogant, right? Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya says means they don't do pranams. They don't bow down in front of noble people. They don't bow down in front of Bhagavan. They don't have humility. And this stubbornness comes with the feeling that I'm always right. You know, once you think you're right, you cannot be corrected. And when you think you're right, you're actually never ready to admit that you're wrong. And if you're never ready to admit that you're wrong, then you're never going to grow or learn. You know, there's people whose minds say, "What? Do pranams to him? No way." Their mind says it, and then their body also says it too, right? And then you'll see situations where parents will tell their kids, go and do pranams to Swamiji, or go and do pranams to this person, to the Pandit, you know? They will stand there and they will refuse to do pranams. But we saw recently only in chapter 11 and in chapter 13 that this is chapter 11 specifically, when Arjuna realizes Bhagavan's greatness, you see the humility that is born in his heart and how he does pranams again and again. So actually, humility is a sign of becoming closer to Paramatma in understanding and in vision. Right? Being stabda, being stubborn, is the exact opposite. They have that famous example, no, about how plants that bend in the storm are the ones that survive. And then plants that are strong and mighty and refuse to bend, they're the ones that fall and break. I remember reading stories like that as a child, right? Or, you know, some people, when they eat food that they're allergic to, their allergic reaction comes out in the form of rheumatoid arthritis. So their joints get stiff and then their back gets stiff and they can't bend, right? Um, some people have an inner version of that. You know, they have like an inner rheumatoid arthritis where they just mentally can't bend. They can't bow to anybody physically or even mentally. Means their mind cannot surrender to another person to learn something from them. You I mean, this is all sounding extreme, but you have to think about how it applies in your life and where in your life you feel you know enough that you don't need to learn or listen to someone else. And one of the barriers in our lives is if someone is younger than us, we automatically assume that there's nothing that can be learned from them. But even from children, there's an unimaginable amount of things that we can learn, right? So this sentiment of not willing to supplicate our intellect to another, stabda. Why are they stabda? Because dhana, mana, mada, anvitaha. They're suffused with the intoxication of pride, the pride of wealth and ego, meaning they have arrogance in their wealth, right? That's like this very simple thing we see in society. People who have money think they can do anything, and they also think they can buy anybody, right? They have this sentiment that everybody has a price. But that is not true. you know, one time I heard a story about how someone brought a large donation for Gurudev, and it was black money, a huge donation they had brought. And Gurudev looked at this person and said, keep your dirty money or your black money. I can't remember what the word was, right? Meaning, don't come here and give me your money, a part of your money, so you can feel like you did a good thing and rid yourself of the guilt of the way you earned it. Like this pardons that, Um, you can't buy everybody. You can buy most people, but you can't buy a truly noble person, right? But these people have arrogance about their wealth and what their wealth can do. Then, yajante nama yajnehi te. They do yajna, but only namesake. And the way they do it is dambhena avidhi purvaka. They do it with hypocrisy or to show off, and they don't follow the vidhi properly. Means they do it according to their own whims and fancies. Hypocrisy means there is just an external show of religion. And I heard like a mind-blowing thing over here. There are some pundits now who will allow you to come to the mandir and take a jandi home. In Guyana and in Trinidad, it is a very popular, it is the norm that when you do puja at home, you put flags on bamboo sticks outside your house as a sign that you've done puja. And it's a tradition that is followed in all Hindu homes over here. Right? You do puja regularly and you keep putting up new flags. Well, some people go to the mandir and they get their flags blessed and they take it home and they put it up without doing the puja anymore, right? Why? Because I want people to see that I have my flags, but I don't want to go through the actual effort of doing the puja, right? Or, I mean, so this is what happened. I mean, that I learned happens here. But in all other parts of the world, there's a version of this too, where people will pay the pandit in some other country to do puja on their behalf. And then they go and say, I did puja today. There's a show of um of doing something. Or people literally just do puja for namesake of doing puja. They're they're sitting there and they've organized everything and they're offering and they're doing whatever they have to do, but their mind is on if people are seeing these nice new puja items that I bought or whatever people think. I don't know, right? But that is hypocritical. It is also hypocritical to purpose because religion is supposed to help us to lift ourselves. It's supposed to help us to dignize our lives. It's supposed to help us to move from materialism to a spiritual vision, right? But what is happening is that this person is using religion to further their materialism. And name and fame is part of material pursuit, right? So you're using one thing for the opposite of what it was meant for. You're using dharma, namesake dharma, for adharma. That is like using the workplace to do your own business, right? Or somebody who goes to the ashram or to the mandir to network, not to study or learn anything. So you have all kinds of people. And they do it avidhi purvakam, meaning they do it without the proper functions and methods. People who are self-taught, feel no, they can understand themselves and they can do things their way, right? It's actually arrogance to think that you know how to do it best. And even people sit there and they think the Pandit doesn't know what they're doing. It may be that some Pandit who is self-taught is sitting there doing the puja and you realize that they don't know what they're doing. But the thinking in the mind, the feeling in the heart that I know is best, also not trained. Purvakam. This is not something that ChatGPT can teach us. It is something that has to be taught properly. Right? Okay, I think enough on that verse. Let us see verse 18. Ahankaram balam darpam
अहङ्कारं बलं दर्पं
kamam krodam samshritaha
कामं क्रोधं च संशिताः
mamatma paradeheshu
मामात्मपरतेहेषु
pravishanto bhyasuyaka
प्रद्विष्वन्तोऽभ्यसूयकाः
gives now a nice list again. Ahankara, abhiman. Balam, strength. Darpam, arrogance. Kama, desire. Krodha, anger. Samshita, full of all of these things, right? And you'll see how many of these things have come and again, right? But Bhagavan is reiterating them because of how prevalent they are in our personality. Ahankara, Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya says, is a strong feeling that I'm the doer and I'm so great. Now, some of that greatness may be existing in them, but some of it may not be existing in them. Right? So sometimes we impute great qualities on ourselves that may or may not be true. And you see this even in little kids, where they have a feeling that they're better than their kids. Watch out for and be this ahankara, Bhagavan Adi Shankara says, is can you all hear me okay? Can you hear me? Is the internet, is it smooth? Okay, let's try this. Okay, we were talking about ahankara. Ahankara is sarva doshanam mulam. It is the root or the cause of all doshas, all faults, all calamitous activities. Because it blinds us so much that we don't even see that what we're doing is bringing destruction to the people around us, right? Like Ravana, he didn't see that the presence of Sitaji was bringing destruction to the whole of Lanka. Mandodariji even told him, return Sita, not out of jealousy, but out of concern for everybody. Return Sita. But he didn't listen because he couldn't see how his action was causing destruction to everyone. Or if he could see, he just didn't care enough. Right? But the point is, ahankara is opposed to anything good. Then Balam. Balam. Bhagavan had said in chapter 7 that he is Balam. But that Balam was Kama Raga Vivarjitam. It was devoid of desire. It was the strength of character. Here he means the power of money or physical power or political power, bully power that is used to suppress other people or to oppress, you know? Then Darpa. Well, and that, I mean, Darpa would be arrogance, but the translation that the way Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya explains is Yasya udbhave dharmam atikramati, because of which, when it arises, the person transgresses dharma. Means they transgress limits of righteousness and good conduct and morality, right? Like Duryodhana is a classic example of someone who had great dharma. He and his whole gang, right? And see what the result of their arrogance led to, what they did to Draupadi, you know? So it's a terrible quality that arises in our mind that makes us transgress dharma. Um, you know, swearing is when somebody swears, it is because there is either anger or arrogance. There's no other reason why somebody will swear. Someone swears when they're angry or when they're arrogant. You observe and see. And neither of those qualities are good qualities to have. And that is one case to make for people who say, but what is the big deal in swearing? It it propagates a negative quality that is there in our mind. Because out of arrogance, then they forget how to speak appropriately. That arrogance has to be expressed in some way or another, no? It comes out in everything, in our actions, in our words, right? Let me tell you a really interesting thing. The word for mirror is darpana, right? Because darpam nayati. The mirror leads us to darpa. You know, that Disney movie, Snow White. That what is it? Is it the witch or the someone, the bad guy and the villain in the movie? She goes, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of all? Right? That is what the mirror does. And as soon as the mirror says you're not, then she's ready to transgress dharma and go and kill somebody else so she's the fairest one of all, right? And this thing has gotten really bad because if you see, you know, during COVID, everyone was online. Schooling happened online. So you had little 4 or 5 year olds on the computer all day with their videos on, looking at themselves the whole time. So you have a generation that has grown up looking at themselves. And now everyone looks at themselves constantly. The number of selfies that people take, and you just compare that to the number of times you saw yourself in the mirror when you were growing up in school. I remember coming back from school some days and being like, oh my God, my hair is such a mess. Why didn't my friends tell me? Because you don't see yourself the whole day. Only if you go to the washroom and only if there isn't a long line over there. You'll wash your hands and then you'll look at yourself for a minute and then you're back to class. Compare that to the state in which society looks at themselves today, right? You know, when somebody is talking to another person on Zoom or in a video call, majority of the time, who are they looking at? They're looking at themselves. So this kind of constantly looking at ourselves, the mirror helps us to lead us to vanity and arrogance and all of those things, right? I don't know, it's a dangerous thing that has happened in society where we constantly look at ourselves. Anyways, then kamam krodham. Kama is from the smallest sensual pleasures all the way to the greatest lust that a person can have, right? Some people are like, I cannot sleep without my pillow, and I cannot sleep without this blanket, and I cannot sleep without the AC or the heating us at a certain temperature or whatever, right? Um, but you can analyze your karma. Just now, the topic of karma will come up in detail. But you analyze how much karma you have by seeing how strong your likes and dislikes are and how upset you get with the Starbucks barista for the quality of your coffee. If you go to Am I back? Guyana internet is teaching me a tremendous amount of patience. So I am grateful to the internet for that. But it is not conducive for this class. So we have to figure out for next week, I will try and figure out some alternate solution, maybe like a dial-in option with the phone audio for voice. But let's see. if we can keep class going. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. I got a suggestion. Maybe everyone can turn off their videos so that the bandwidth will hopefully carry the voice more. I'm sad to not see your faces. It's really awkward to talk to myself. I was just talking about how we shouldn't be looking at ourselves when we talk talk to me. Okay. Let us see. Um, just message me in the chat if I get stuck, because now I can't see if you're all frozen, right? So just keep me updated, and fingers crossed we can finish class. Okay. Krodham. Krodham is anger. Well, we talked about it and we will talk about it again. But when you get something you don't like, or when you hear something you don't like, the natural consequence is getting angry, right? So these people with Asuri Bhav, they're samshritaha, they're endowed with all these vices and many others. Mam atma paradeheshu pradvishantaha. They hate me in their own self, in their own body, and in the body of other people, right? See, Bhagavan is the self in all hearts. And I mean, in chapter 11, he's all eyes and faces and everything. In chapter 13 also, we hear that, right? How he's everyone, he's everything. So Bhagavan is saying these people hate the self, which is all pervasive. How? Meaning, one is they would have no regard for the laws that operate, right? No regard for the all pervasive divinity, no regard for the fact that everyone and everything has a purpose and a place, no regard for the fact that we're the self, we're not just this body. Guruji says that when we think we are just the body, we have insulted the Atma. Same with the other person. If we think the other person is just a person and not Bhagavan or not the self, we have insulted the Atma. And so, see how far this thing has to go in terms of what we have to practice, right? And Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya says the sentiment is also that they disregard or they transgress Bhagavan's teaching, instructions, the values and the ideals that are given in the Vedas. They'll say, what Vedas? I use Elon Musk's guide to life because I want money, or whatever they say, right? But and then for spiritually inclined people, they may have the sentiment, well, I can figure it out for myself without having to use the Vedas. So this is disregard for Bhagavan, for the self, for the knowledge, like that. And yesterday in chapter 13, Swamiji was talking about how one who sees Bhagavan's all pervasiveness, they don't degrade the self. So that is actually the sadhana to be practiced, right? To try to see the all pervasiveness of Bhagavan. And that is what helps us to ensure that we don't hate the self that is all pervasive. Then, abhyasuyakaha. They find fault with good things also. They can't bear the good in others. They can't bear to see other people evolve. Like it pricks something in them. When I had just started to go to chick class, I had friends being like, "What? You're going to become a pundit?" I was just going to a discussion class on spirituality, you know? And they use things like, "Oh, Sadhu Baba," in a mocking way, you know? And then Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya clearly tells that they cannot bear the virtues of those on the righteous path. They find fault in it. And see, leave spiritual path, even in university. You go there to study. That is the purpose of university, right? But now, when you tell your friends, no, 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 I can't come out tonight, I'm going to study. You say, what? You're such an auntie. What is wrong with you? Let's go out and have fun. So people try to make others feel bad for doing the right thing. That is this thing. They cannot bear they cannot bear for other people to do good. They can't bear goodness somehow, right? And they don't realize that it is a negative quality. Yeah? Okay. Now, let us see what Bhagavan says. We will chant 19 and 20 together. What is the result of someone living a life like this? What is the consequence of someone living with this Asuri Bhav? Because it is one thing to say they go to further bondage, but what exactly does that look like? So Bhagavan tells in very, very clear words now what the consequences are. तानहं द्विषतः क्रूरान्
तानहं द्विषतः क्रूरान्
संसारेषु नराधमान्
संसारेषु नराधमान्
क्षिपाम्यजस्रमशुभान्
क्षिपाम्यजस्रमशुभान्
आसुरीष्वेव योनिषु
आसुरीष्वेव योनिषु
आसुरीं योनिमापन्नाः
आसुरीं योनिमापन्नाः
मूढा जन्मनि जन्मनि
मूढा जन्मनि जन्मनि
मामप्राप्यैव कौन्तेय
मामप्राप्यैव कौन्तेय
ततो यान्त्यधमां गतिम्.
ततो यान्त्यधमां गतिम्.
Bhagavan says, this is two super strong verses, huh? Tan aham kshipami. I throw them. Kship is to throw, literally. I throw them. Where do I throw? Who? Dvishata kruran. These cruel, hating people. Right? Bhagavan had said just now, no, that they hate me in their own body and in others' bodies. Means they hate everybody. Right? And hating means you can disregarding the self. In the way we take care of ourselves also, right? You know, if somebody has the capacity to hate, they also have the capacity to love. So this thing gets very clouded. Like Ravana hated Bhagavan Sri Ram, but he had love for wealth, he had love for prosperity, he had love for enjoyment, right? So here we're talking about hatred of or disregard for spiritual values, noble things, duty, right? And it doesn't have it, you see this happen in people's lives right around us and in us also. If someone has the TGIF and OGIM attitude, meaning thank God it's Friday, I don't need to go to work anymore, and oh God it's Monday, oh I have to go back to my work, right? It means they're dreading doing their duty, right? But duty is supposed to be something that we feel happy to do, right? So there's a hatred for or a dislike for doing one's duty. This is a bad quality, right? He says these people are nara adhaman. They're the meanest, lowest kind of people. And sometimes people do things and you think, I couldn't imagine that a human being could stoop to such a level of existence. You know, and when Bhagavan uses these extreme words, please think. Don't just disregard it saying it doesn't apply to me. Right? What is the worst thing that a person can do as a human being? It is to ignore their humanness. It is to not use their intellect. It is to not try to evolve. Right? How strongly these will be there in variations, but they will be there. Right? And Ashubhan. Ashubhan means inauspicious, means their lives are filled with sorrow. So you ask, is my life filled with sorrow? If the answer is yes, then I have to think about this more seriously. Right? Okay, Bhagavan, where do you throw them? And where? And when? Right? Ajasra. Continuously. I throw them samsareshu. In samsara. And he doesn't use singular, he used plural. In all types of samsara, right? In these worlds. But what is the difference? Asurishu eva yonishu. In asuri yonis, in asuri wombs, meaning papa yonis. And like I had said earlier, there's no translation for papa. Papa is terribly attempted to be translated as sin, but that is not what it is. Papa is that which protects our sorrow and our ignorance, right? So you ask, what kind of womb protects your sorrow and your ignorance? Animal birth is the one that is described as what this is, right? See, an animal cannot evolve. If someone is born a cow that wakes up, eats grass, goes to sleep, can only eat if grass is around, can't go and pick and store and all of that, and then they die just like that, right? Means it's a helpless, limited existence filled with sorrow in comparison to the life of a human being, right? Like a dog that is locked in a cage their whole life. The cage is opened to give food and it is locked back. They feel pain and they can't tell you that they're feeling pain. Right? Just yesterday we were sitting out in a veranda that's filled with like glass windows, and it's semi-open. So you have birds flying in and out. I mean, we live by the Amazon, so we have beautiful birds over here, right? So birds flying in and out. And these poor birds, they keep flying into the glass windows and banging their heads and hurting themselves, and they bang one after the other until they find the one that's open. Right? What kind of life is that? So you have to think, what is it that we gained by being human beings? And the greatest thing that we gained is the capacity to come out of our sorrow altogether. So if we don't use this human life to come out of our sorrow altogether, then we've wasted it. You know, animals are the ones who eat, breathe, sleep, repeat. And they're the ones who have fear from birth to death. But human life doesn't have to be lived like that. So Bhagavan says, I throw them again and again into these samsari asuri wombs, right? Meaning, if you cheat, then you become a cheetah. I mean, I'm just only because it rhymes, right? If you bark, you become a dog. If you slither and you sting, then you become a snake or whatever, you know? Um, you do papa, you end up in a papa yoni. That is the sentiment. And there are some animals, their name itself scares you, right? So no one wants to go near them, right? And these papa yonis can include human births that are filled with tamas, meaning there's no thinking, there's total ignorance, right? And it can include other worlds also. You could be people could be born into yonis, means into a womb, in a world, in a form that we cannot even imagine. Because Ananta Koti Brahmanda, infinite cosmoses exist. You cannot even fathom the life forms that exist in these universes. It's unimaginable, right? But Bhagavan says, these mudhas, these ignorant, deluded people, Janmani, Janmani, again and again, birth after birth, Mam aprapya eva, not reaching me. Means Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya says they don't even reach the path that leads to me, right? Means totally oblivious that anything greater exists in the world. Tataha, thereafter, they reach this adhamam gatim. They reach lower and lower states because their ignorance is perpetuated. Bhagavan, this contradicts everything that we learn about the fact that you are compassionate. It contradicts everything about the fact that Sanatana Dharma is different from other religions. It sounds like they're doomed forever to hell. And and where is Karunanidhan Prabhu Sri Ram? What is going on here? What are these two verses supposed to tell us? Right? Well, there are a few key differences that these verses literally sound like that. Right? But just pause and see. The first thing that we think about is the concept of the law of karma. You know, if somebody steals something from your house or just from anywhere in the village, we want that person to pay for it. Forget that extreme example. If somebody gets extra of your favorite snack, you say that's not fair, right? You hear two siblings arguing. about how to distribute the chips packet. And one will say it should be half and half. And the older one will say, but I'm bigger, I should get more. And the younger one will say, no, but I'm younger, so I should get more. There's, Ernie and Bert from Sesame Street. They're trying to divide the food equally. And so it's very hard to divide something exactly in half all the time. So one is a little bit bigger. So Ernie goes and takes a bite to make it equal. He goes and eats the extra to make it equal. But now this one is not equal anymore. So he takes a bite of that one to make it equal. The sentiment of fairness and justice is an inbuilt thing that we intrinsically understand and seek. When big people pay their way out of jail or get away with wrong things, it makes people angry because people should be treated. You want the law of justice to be upheld and upheld fairly, right? Now, in the human world, it appears that justice is not upheld, but the law of karma is infallible, right? Meaning, if you have done something wrong, you must pay for it. When it is other people, we're like, yes, they must pay for it, right? But when it comes to us, we're like, can I appeal? But the principle is, if you have done something wrong, there must be a consequence. Now, who decides the consequence? Actually, it is the action itself which decides the consequence. Gurudev says in a most wonderful statement, we are not punished for our sins, but we are punished by our sins. Meaning, what is the consequence of putting your hand in fire? The mother doesn't say, I'm going to punish you now for not listening. The act itself delivers the punishment. Whether you did something knowingly or unknowingly, like I have heard so many examples. In my family itself, so many young kids have gone and burned their hands. One of my little cousins burned her foot with an iron because she didn't understand the concept that an iron gets hot. The act itself delivers the punishment. So then, how is it that Bhagavan says, I throw them into Asuri yonis? It is like this. In a court, when a person goes, there's a judge, and the judge is the one that determines the punishment that this person gets. But the judge has to follow the law, meaning if the judge says, okay, 5 years in jail, it's not that they're making up 5 years in jail. It is based on laws that they've derived, the 5 years in jail, right? You can't say, oh my God, the judge gave that person 5 years. What a terrible judge. He did a crime that warranted it. And the judge just makes sure that the appropriate punishment is given. I'm talking about a fair judge. I'm not talking about unfair judges, right? The police cannot send him straight to jail. It is the judge that has to authorize the punishment. That person comes with a ticket for overspeeding in front of the judge. And the judge says, how do you plead? Guilty or not guilty? Well, if you say not guilty, and there's evidence showing that you're guilty, there's no pardon. If you say not guilty, and you can explain yourself, then there's some pardon. Then, now see, if you say guilty, the admission of the guilt somehow evokes compassion. and that judge says, okay, you are going 60 over, but I will remove your demerit points and you'll just end up with a small ticket. You admit your mistake and then there's compassion. But anyways, you all know where that story ends, right? The role of the judge is to meter punishment based on intention, not just action. So Bhagavan, when he says he throws them into Asuri yonis, means as karma phaladata, as judge, he gives us the result of our own action by making sure that the law is upheld and that whatever action we did we get the fair result. You can never blame a judge that he's condemned so many people and put so many people in jail. Oh my God, you have put like 100 people in jail in just 1 month. You're going to get terrible papa. You're totally uncompassionate. You can't say that, okay? But if his judge friends ask, so how many people did you send to jail today? Yeah, I sent 5 people to jail today. It's not that he sent them, but the manner of speaking is like that. Now, you know, as came out earlier, along with the justice, there's also compassion, especially with Bhagavan, right? And it is not just at the beginning, but throughout, right? See, even in regular law, this applies. If someone has gone to jail for like a 10-year sentence, and then you see by like 8 years, they're really repenting, well, that sentence is cut short sometimes because intention is what is looked at, right? The third thing is it is not permanent. This adhamam gatim that is being described, we don't go to Naraka forever. The Papa Yoni is not forever. Naraka is not forever. And see how compassionate. It is designed in such a way that you cannot accrue more karma while you're in that Papa Yoni. It is only to exhaust karma. For example, a washing machine is meant to only take out dirt, not to add dirt to clothes at the same time. Right? You might say, I object. Sometimes I put my clothes in, especially these white ones, and they come out colored. So what do you mean a washing machine doesn't give dirt? Well, you can guarantee it will be clean. But Bhagavan's washing machine is not like that. It doesn't even transfer your color, don't worry, right? But see, what happens is when we go through animal birth, there's an exhaustion of papa, and then we come back and again we get human life, right? And when the karmas are exhausted, we get another chance. How much compassion there is that you cannot create new karmas while you're exhausting such negative karmas. Like a tiger. Imagine a tiger gets bad karma every time they go and hunt. Well, they're going to be doomed forever, right? But it doesn't work like that. They don't accrue any they're not doing karma because they're guided by prakriti and they're just going through results at that time. Now you tell me, if you have to stand in the blazing sun all day, no moving, only giving, right? And you have to bear all kinds of weather. You have to go through cold and heat and would you rather be a human being or a tree? Well, Bhagavan, if I have to go through this karma and it is easier to go through it as a tree, am I allowed to be a tree and go through it? Yeah, of course you are. Means you get the most ideal body that allows you to go through that result in the most compassionate way, right? So being born in a Papa Yoni is an expression of compassion, actually, right? So what are we supposed to learn from these two verses? One, if we have made mistakes, we're not doomed forever. Because when you hear this long list, you feel like, oh my God, what's going on with me? Um, it's compassion to get another chance. And eventually you'll come back as a human being. Then you're supposed to make sure you use your life in such a way that you don't do the things that will send you there, right? We're supposed to use our life for human things. We're supposed to use our intellect and practice values and bring Devi Sampat in our life. So even though these shlokas sound harsh, there's actually a lot of compassion in them. Compassion also in the fact that he's telling us what actions will send us there. If you do this, you're going to end up there. Then compassion in the way that it is exhausted, in which body it is exhausted, right? Compassion in the duration being reduced if there's real repentance, right? And we can never blame Bhagavan. He's only making sure that justice is upheld. So the judge doesn't punish. He just makes sure that you get the punishment that is deserved. Right? And the difference between a human judge and Bhagavan judge is that, well, see this. If you had to choose between a human judge and Bhagavan judge, who would you choose? You know, a human being is partial to his people, right? And a human being can be bribed, my people, and all of that. But Bhagavan is not partial at all. Even when his own bhaktas make mistakes, they are punished. Like Naraji made a mistake, he was punished, right? Jay and Vijay made mistake, they were punished. So it Bhagavan is like rain, equal to all people, right? Now, if you want rain, it seems like he's showering love on you. But if you don't want rain, it seems like punishment, right? But the rain is also only coming by our own karma, right? So being punished doesn't mean we're not loved. Actually, being punished means we are loved so much that our papa is going to be exhausted in the easiest way possible and that we're not doomed to hell forever. And when we appeal, and Bhagavan says, okay, that is also based on laws, right? There's nothing random in this world. So now a person says, okay, Bhagavan, now I finally realize how serious this thing is. Can you tell me again how not to go to hell? But it means to Naraka. Please, hell is like a really bad translation for Naraka. It's just by habit that we use it, right? Use the actual word, Naraka. Bhagavan, how not to go to Naraka? But don't tell me like a long way, like you've told like 15 verses. I can't remember 15 verses. You please give me a short, simple summary so that I can remember. And I never forget the things that I shouldn't do to make sure that I don't end up in Naraka. Because even if there's compassion, I mean, the compassion is now I've ended up with this human birth. So let me use this birth properly, right? So now Bhagavan tells. Let us chant number 21. This is the verse that you all discussed last week when internet was down over here. Trividham narakasyedam
त्रिविधं नरकस्येदम्
dvaram nashanamaatmanah
द्वारं नाशनमात्मनः
kama krodhastatha lobah
कामक्रोधस्तथा लोभः
tasmadetattrayam tyajet.
तस्मादेतत्त्रयं त्यजेत्.
Okay. There are Trividham narakasya idam dvaram. There are 3 gateways to Naraka. 3 huge, unmissable gateways to Naraka. Like you can't enter it by mistake. It is so big, it is in your face, And the other side is it is so big that if it is open, you may not even know it is there. That some gates are so big like that, right? Now, before we see what they are, Naraka, what exactly is Naraka? Naraka is not hell as we translate it. Naraka in Sanskrit is that which leads us to suffering. Right? Where we go and suffer is Naraka. And Naraka is the opposite of Svarga, where a person just goes to enjoy. And these dwaras, these gateways, are nashanam atmanaha. They are doors to self-destruction. Meaning, Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya says, we become unfit for achieving great results. Okay? It is the greatest destruction because it destroys our chance at being liberated from the cycle of birth and death, having gotten this special human birth. So we're born again and again, and we're stuck. And being born means you can be born in any yoni, Bhagavan just said, right? What does it mean to destroy this nasham that is being talked about? In chapter 2, Bhagavan had said, pranashyati. This person is considered destroyed when buddhi nashat, when their buddhi is destroyed, meaning when our buddhi is not usable. People's buddhis become unusable when they drink, when they smoke weed or other kinds of substances like that, when they stupefy their mind by scrolling. And also, see, these things may not apply to you, right? But we're culprit too. When we follow society and we follow what society says without thinking whether it is right or wrong, right? Like society says, eat, drink, and be merry. YOLO, you only live once. Work hard, play hard, all kinds of slogans, right? We live our whole life using those slogans without ever thinking if it is correct or wrong. Because, society's definition of success is not always Shastra's definition of success. Therefore, it doesn't have to be your definition of success, meaning we have to think for ourselves. When we don't, we lead ourselves to Nashanam. What are these three gateways to lost opportunities? Kama, Krodha, Lobha. Desire, anger, and greed. See, now when we talk about kama or desire, everybody has desires. Without desire, a person can't even blink. There's that famous Sanskrit phrase, yadyat karoti kinchit tat tat kamasya cheshtam. Everybody, whatever they do, it is only because of desire. So I have desire for satsang. I have desire to wake up at 6:30 in the morning and go to class. That leads me to naraka? No. We have to qualify the desire here. The qualification is that desires that are extroverted, insatiable, irresistible, compulsive, meaning no matter what, I need to fulfill it, right? And a feeling, whether conscious or unconscious, that my happiness depends on it, right? That is what would be considered here as calm. And insatiable means no matter how much you fulfill it, you never feel content. But after we have to class, we feel content. So there's a difference in the desires, right? Now see, what percentage of your desires don't get fulfilled? Call a number. I can't see you, so call a number for yourselves in your mind, wherever you are. Okay. What percentage of desires get fulfilled? Well, 100 minus that amount, right? So if you have 100% desires, out of that 100%, X amount will be fulfilled and Y amount will not be fulfilled. Well, whatever does not get fulfilled becomes Krodha, door number 2. And whatever gets fulfilled becomes Lobha, door number 3. So once Kama has entered the picture, it is just bad news all around. Because Krodha, you know what Krodha does. It makes us blind. And Lobha, meaning greed, also makes us blind to what is wrong. And we are ready to commit any papa to get what we want. Right? So we are doomed either way. Therefore, tasmat etat trayam tyaji. Therefore, drop these 3. Right? Nothing else to drop. You just said to Bhagavan, please give me a simple way to remember everything. So Bhagavan is giving only 3. If you drop these 3, they're the main gang leaders. The others can't do anything. Like when Bhagavan Sri Rama killed Ravana, the other Rakshasas became ineffective, right? So in the same way, these are the 3 we focus on and we drop them and we pray to Bhagavan that we don't succumb to them and we prevent ourselves from entering the doorways to Naraka, i.e., suffering. Well, now the magic question, the $1,000,000,000,000 question, how to drop them? And the $1 response is that Bhagavan has already answered all of this in the above chapters. Right? No, but Bhagavan, tell me again because I keep forgetting. Well, Everybody, please think about it. How to drop these three: Kama, Krodha, Lobha. And we'll have a short reflection on it at the beginning of next class. And then we'll wrap up this topic. I think next week we might finish chapter 16. Yeah. Okay. 7:44. I didn't keep time for discussion today because last class was full discussion. And I thought to balance it out, we can do out class today. Okay. Video is back on because class is done. I'll do a closing prayer. And if there are any burning questions, I'll stay back for a few minutes to answer them. It is so nice to see all your faces again. It's extremely weird to be talking to your own self. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai.